Live Day Drinking with Wes Hagen. I am your host, Wes Hagen. I am the I'm the winemaker and for J.Wilkes wines here in Santa Maria Valley of California. I'm also the I'm also the brand ambassador for the Miller Family Wine Company, which also includes the Smashberry wines, the Ballard Lane, as well as the Barrel Burner. So we get together Monday through Friday. Monday through Thursday is generally kind of a get together. We taste a wine, we have a conversation. Mondays are generally spent discussing what's going on in general wine education. Tuesday, we just do a tasting. Wednesday, we talk about issues of advanced wine education as well as viticulture and enology. And then Fridays used to be a little bit more into the hospitality realm. And we have changed that. And Fridays are now, I'm very excited to tell all of you, Fridays are now going to be a dedicated Zoom presentation webinar with a guest coming in each week. So tomorrow, I'm very, very excited. And by the way, if you are interested in watching this on Instagram does cut me off if I go over an hour. Yes, last night I did. So I'm just going to start Instagram at 5. So there's a reason that all my Facebook Live people that have been following me for the last month, you guys are going to get the bonus. If it's a bonus, I would call it, you guys are gluttons for punishment. But if you guys want to hang out 4:45 to 5 o'clock, I will be here. And always good to see, looks like Steve South's in the house and Mark McPhillips. I hope the beer is cold and your backyard pool is cool enough to cool you down. I bet it's pretty warm down in Sierra Madre. So what we're going to be doing tonight is Viognier. And what we're going to be doing tomorrow is very exciting. Vince Anter from V is for Vino. And V is for Vino is the #1 rated wine show on Amazon Prime. Oh, that's so nice, Jolie. I'm so glad that you do. And welcome. So lovely to have you here. So tomorrow, Vince, we did a little practice session today and practiced on our Zoom, and looks like it's going to happen. And we're very excited about it. It's going to start right at 5 o'clock tomorrow, and it's going to be broadcast. This is really important. You're going to hear me say this a few times, and I apologize. It will be broadcast only on the J.Wilkes Wines Santa Barbara Facebook page. It has to be to a commercial Facebook page. It can only be broadcast to one. So that's the plan, and that's what we'll be doing. So I'm looking forward to seeing all of you tomorrow for a really exciting program on 10 things you never knew about wine and why they matter. So I've done my research. I have everything typed up. I'm going to be basically playing moderator and winemaker. So I will be presenting my perspective on the 10 sort of things I'm hoping you don't know. I'm kind of thinking, Jolie, I can't say you don't know these 10 things because you've actually seen me talk about them pretty much at every winemaker dinner. Michelle's in the house. And again, thank you, Michelle. It is already covered in Post-it notes. And if you don't know, Michelle bought me the new edition of Wine Folly, and this book won the 2019 James Beard Award, which is a huge deal, as I've always said. I will not shut up until someone gives me a James Beard Award, and then I will go and take my millions of dollars and open a disc golf camp someplace, and that's my plan. So I will not stop until someone says, dude, you've done enough for wine and food. Here's your James Beard Award. That'll be my end game right there. So thank you, Michelle. Very sweet gift, and I thoroughly appreciate this wonderful, wonderful book. It's killer too. I love how just beautifully visual it is. It's truly a wine book that appeals to a modern audience with not a lot of time. Vince is in the house, guys. We got Vince Anter from V is for Vino. Very exciting that we're going to have some time tomorrow. And if you just tuned in, the deal is we're going to do Viognier tonight. We're going to do a 2018 J.Wilkes Viognier. We're going to talk about Viognier. We're going to talk a little bit about Roussanne, Marsanne. What's the difference? And how did Rich Kunde screw it all up at Sonoma Grapevines? We'll talk a little bit about how to tell, and can you tell now that if a California vineyard says they has Marsanne, is it really Roussanne? It probably is. So Marsanne and Roussanne. I have to start saying them correctly. I'm saying them more like someone from Chicago. Nothing wrong with Chicago, one of my favorite towns in the world, and it's also pretty close to the official sponsor of Day Drinking, besides the Miller Family Wine School and the Miller Family Wine Company, which is the state of Minnesota. I also discovered something. I have been saying that the Volstead Act, which basically started prohibition in the United States, was the 19th Amendment. I looked it up. It's the 18th Amendment, and no one told me. I blame each and every one of you. Come on, you gotta school me here. And Elaine and Scott are in from Vegas, and everyone knows that we're getting together in Vegas after this. And I've already cleared it with my master sommelier friend, Will Costello, and we're all staying at his house. His wife doesn't know. I'm just kidding. But he'll definitely make sure that we are well taken care of and we have a lot of cool opportunities. Again, I am going live on Instagram, basically the exact same show, just with a different camera, exactly at 5 o'clock. So the Instagram show will be a little tighter. This show is a little bit more about getting here a little early, having a little drink, talking, seeing who's here, welcoming everybody, and make sure that everyone feels the love. I'm not as used to the Instagram platform yet. No big deal. I'll figure it out. And looking forward to integrating some of that, sort of potentially a younger audience and potentially some people that don't get touched here as far as connectivity on Facebook. So that'll be sort of fun, and looking forward to it. And Josh Cohn, welcome. So glad you guys here. And Bob's here too. And yes, and Bob was talking about, you feel shame. You should never feel shame, John. Shame's for other people. I apologize. I am not stoned tonight. I am suffering my first bout of fairly serious hay fever. Fortunately, my nose isn't running. And what's really happening right now is I always shower for you guys, because I don't know if Facebook has figured out how to let you smell me and what I'm tasting. But I always shower. It feels like I should come on and be fresh for you guys. And they say you should get dressed up to go to work in your own office every morning. I don't do that. I'm pretty much in just like my skull and crossbones sweats and like a t-shirt most of the day. But I do actually dress and actually groom myself for all you fine folk. Because I figure whatever help that can have, you guys have to look at it. I'll try to make it at least 5% better. And looks like Lisa just came in. Welcome. And yeah, I do deserve a James Beard Award. Well, maybe at the end of my career. I got to figure out how to convince them that writing American viticultural areas somehow furthers American food and wine culture a lot more than James Beard Awards are generally not. It's more food-based, and I talk a lot about food. I consider wine food, so I guess I just have to focus in and make sure everyone understands that when I talk about wine, I'm also talking about food. Big fan of the James Beard Society, and something that I always like to do. Yeah, I decided I have a shirt. Michelle's never seen it. You guys never seen it. I'm trying never to wear the same shirt twice. I think I wore my Pliny the Elder shirt twice, but I'm not drinking Pliny the Elder tonight because I'm drinking Minnesota beer. Yay, Axeman. So this is the Axeman, one of my favorite double IPAs. I can take a little bit of hoppy bitterness once in a while, as long as the beer is fantastic. And this beer is every bit of that fantastic. Courtney, I recognize your last name. So I know exactly who you are. And I know actually where your husband went to college, finally. I was very confused about Texas colleges, but now UTA. I'm pretty sure that's right, because I thought it was A&M, and I think I was just confused by Matthew McConaughey. Who can tame him? All right. So we're going to have some fun tonight with some J.Wilkes wines. I will remind you guys, we got about 5 minutes before we start the real show. This is sort of the intro to the show. We kind of get ready, have a little drink, and at 5 o'clock on the spot, I will start the Instagram camera, and we will launch into a beautiful tasting of this 2018 J.Wilkes Viognier. Talk a little bit. Welcome, Sean. Phil, lovely. Yes. So my hero, Phil Carpenter. Are you ready for this? So I get a call from Phil Carpenter. He's the Assistant Executive Director of the Santa Barbara County Vintners Association, obviously very important position. I will be, Sean, 5 o'clock, because they cut me off after a certain amount of time. And just in case I go an hour, I'm going to start the Instagram right at 5. So there'll be like a little place to hang out here until 5 o'clock, 4:45 to 5, and then I'm going to start the IG camera then. So what I was saying is that it's really important for you guys, too, to understand that when Phil called me, that was a little bit of me waiting until my brain caught up. Phil called me this afternoon and said, I've just been working on the website for the new Santa Barbara County Vintners Association website. Thank you for doing that. That you were basically bored out of your skull and you needed to take a little drive. So he basically, from the winemaker, Don Schroeder, at Sea Smoke, has a gets Alvarado Street beers delivered to him on a regular basis. Don gave him 2 beers for me, and he drove them from Lompoc, 35 minutes up to my house in Orchid, dropped them off, and then drove home. I assume maybe he went to Costco, or I doubt that. But so cool to see one of my best friends basically in a mask right outside my front door delivering me Alvarado Street beers. So yeah, so he got an Axeman. He got one of my Castle Dangers. He got a Foggy Geezer, which is the 3 Pigs, McKellar, and the 3 Floyds collab from Minnesota. And I gave them a big old jar of my homemade turkey chili, which I just made today after getting some work done this morning. For sort of my lunchtime, I cooked. We made some cookies, and we made some amazing turkey chili. Might be a little spicy for the kids with those chipotles in it, but they were born in California probably. So my guess is those kids probably were born with a jalapeno in their mouths. So we're all well and good. We just got a couple more minutes. So if you just came in, let me know where you are, what you're drinking. And looks like Keith got his, wow, that was fast. You got your 2016 mixed case of Pinot Blanc and Zin, and the 2016, isn't it nice? I just actually busted out the 16 Pinot Blanc that had been under the little repour. And it was absolutely delicious. I thought even 2 or 3 days after I had tasted it on the show, I thought it was really, really showing beautifully. So this is absolutely, yeah, Sean, you're right. Yeah, I used to be an IPA hater. I waited until they had kind of jumped the shark, and then I jumped in late. Actually, what kind of got me into IPAs was actually hazies. So I learned to drink hazies, which cut down the bitterness. And then as I started understanding how hops influence flavor and how much just the kind of pininess and dankness of hops is like static on a TV, and there's so much other complexity going on behind that. I learned that actually in Portland, Oregon, at a place called Boneyard. And this was before Boneyard was sold. I understand it now has some corporate influence. But Boneyard is a fantastic brewery in Bend, Oregon, I believe. And they're called Boneyard because they only buy brewing equipment that has been that was bought by a brewery that failed. And then when the brewery fails, they swoop in and buy all their equipment, which I thought was kind of a cool thing. And I had their triple IPA, which was 100 IBUs. And it blew my mind. It was so incredibly good. So because that beer was so amazing, I decided, well, if a triple IPA at 100 IBUs can be delicious, and I do like, 45, 65 IBU IPAs, boom, let's get in and let's start drinking more. So now there's no real beer styles. Plus, when I found out that I really have to watch my blood sugar, and I can't drink pastry stouts, and I can't drink peanut butter stouts, or milkshake stouts, or anything that has a lot of lactose, milk sugar, or anything like that really spikes my blood sugar. I decided that instead of drinking dark beers, which are one of my great passions, I used to absolutely love dark beer. Now I've kind of given up dark beer, and I'm moving probably more towards the lager, Kolsch, and Pils. Cool. We're almost ready to rock and roll. I've got a little preview for you guys, the 2018 J.Wilkes Viognier, Paso Robles Highlands District. This is the second time as a winemaker I've actually been in charge of the production of a white Rhone wine. This white Rhone wine is only the second really white Rhone that I've made in my entire 25 years of winemaking professionally. And the other one was a Grenache Blanc, which someone was actually drinking last night on the show and shared that it was still drinking rather well. I think it's 2013. Awesome. Yeah, the metformin just doesn't do it for me. My pancreas crapped out like for my 50th birthday. So pretty much it's measuring my interstitial fluid through a constant glucose monitor and insulin. All right, it's 4:59. It's time. I'm going to go ahead and fire this up. All right. Hey, well, welcome. So it is official. We are on 2 separate platforms right now. We are on Facebook Live. We are on Instagram Live as well. And welcome to Day Drinking with Wes Hagen. It's 5 o'clock, which means that we're drinking, right? So I've got a beer here, Axeman from Surly Brewing in Minneapolis, Minnesota, one of my favorite breweries. And as you know, if you've watched the show anytime before, you know how much I love Minnesota beer. So I would say more times than not, I'm probably drinking either Minnesota beer here, Russian River Brewing, or maybe Alvarado Street. Captain Fatty's is another fantastic Santa Barbara brewery that's doing awesome stuff. But tonight on Day Drinking, I should say today on Day Drinking, because if it was tonight, that would be a misnomer. We're going to be talking about Viognier. We're going to be talking about white Rhones. We're going to be talking about the mistake that happened in California with Marsan and Roussan and why it matters. And then I'm going to get you fired up. Probably a little bit of a shorter show today. Easy for me to say. That we're going to be talking a little bit about what we're doing tomorrow, which is going to be awesome. And Vince from Vias for Vino, which is Amazon Prime's #1 wine show. It's a fantastic wine show. The production value is absolutely spectacular. If you haven't seen Vias for Vino, check it out as quick as you can. You're going to love it. You will love it. And then tomorrow, Vince is a great personality, and I can't wait to get on a Zoom call with him. We're going to break down 10 things you never knew about wine and why they matter. Some of you might know one or two, but I tried to go sort of as off topic and crazy as I can. So these should be topics that will be extremely fun to talk about, that should be things that you have questions about. We're going to be taking questions off of the Facebook thing. The most important thing that you need to know, though, is that you have to know Instagram will be done for tomorrow's show at 5 o'clock. But Facebook, it has to be on the Facebook J.Wilkes Wines Santa Barbara. J.Wilkes Wines Santa Barbara, starting right at 5 o'clock. We will open up maybe even a little bit early just to make sure it's working. And then everyone's going to come in and we're going to have a great time. We're expecting a big crowd. We're going to get a lot of questions. And I really hope that you'll join us tomorrow, Friday, May Day. You will not hear any communist propaganda. You will not see anyone goose-stepping or nuclear weapons moving through the streets of Orchid. What you will hear is an amazing, compelling, interesting conversation about wine, and slightly interesting and off maybe things you've never heard about in the world of wine and maybe why they matter. So looking forward to that. It's going to be great. But it is Day Drinking with Wes Hagen, which means if I'm not drinking, I'm not doing my job. So if you're just tuning in for the first time, I do this generally without notes, without a net, without any type of teleprompter. My brain fortunately works this way because, believe it or not, why does my brain work this way? Probably because I have some problems with my brain. And when I was growing up, everyone told me I was hyperactive or I was a spaz. Turns out I am severely ADHD and I've never taken any medication for it. I consider it my superpower. So welcome to ADHD Theater, Day Drinking with Wes Hagen. The more I drink, the better you feel. So let's get going. I should probably make sure that the hole is the right way before I start drinking. Why does beer always taste so delicious at the end of the day? Probably because I didn't drink a lot of beer today. I did actually use a little bit of beer in my chili today. So I put about a little more than a half a can of some nice IPA from Castle Danger in Twin Harbors, Minnesota. Minnesota always just pops up. And boom, had some delicious beer for myself, had a half a beer for lunch, and made some absolutely delicious chili, which I got to share with Phil Carpenter. Phil, I am looking forward for you telling me how you like that. And also one thing I love to see as I'm talking about this stuff, and I'm already getting some questions, and I'll pull those questions down after I pop this wine and taste it. We'll take a little break. I'll answer some questions, welcome some more people. But what I found is a lot of people were saying that it was a little confusing while I was doing the tasting and the sort of content part of these, that if I constantly welcomed everyone coming in while they came in and answering questions as they popped up, it was a little too disjointed. So I see your question and I'm going to get to it. And I think it's a great question. So thank you, Vintage Buzz. Definitely get to that for sure. Okay, so I've got the delicious 2018 J.Wilkes Viognier. It's about a $20 bottle of wine. It's available at jwilkes.com, millerfamilywines.com. Use the promo code DD50 so they know that you came from here. That'll get you $10 flat rate shipping. You get 20% off 6 bottles or more, 25% off a case or more. And if you are a wine club member, DD50 also gets you 1 cent shipping per case, which is awesome. If you're interested in a new wine club, we also have wine club hangouts once a month in Zoom where the whole wine club gets together and we just hang out, drink, and talk. That'll be until we reopen our brand new and, but bitchin' tasting room down in just off the beach in Santa Barbara, literally steps off Stearns Wharf, downtown Santa Barbara. You can smell the ocean in a good way. And we would love to have you come back the moment that we open up. And we'll talk a little bit about when it's going to open up right after this. So welcome, everybody. Let's get to drinking some Viognier. So Viognier. So it's a grape from generally the northern Rhone. It's one grape. There's really not too many AOCs, these appellations of control, these little areas in France that if it's grown within the boundary around the AOC, you can call it Burgundy or Nuit Saint George or Bordeaux or Hermitage. So there is one very tiny little area. I guess Beaujolais. Beaujolais would be one grape, right? No, I guess there's Beaujolais Blanc, Gamay Blanc. So you got Gamay Blanc, very similar to Pinot Blanc, but in this little region called Condrieu, Condrieu basically is a region that only allows the production of Viognier in the northern Rhone. So if you see a Condrieu, it's 100% Viognier. It has to be. It can't be anything else. It's absolutely 100%. Excellent. So Viognier is a varietal that, if you want to be pleasant and polite about it, it is very highly aromatic and come hither. If you want to be a little more sort of racy about it, it is just unapologetically slutty. In the sense, and there's no gender identification with that word slutty in the way that I describe it. Slutty just means anything that offers pleasure with no ability to restrain itself. And what's wrong with that? Anything that offers pleasure with no restraint, to me, just sounds like the type of people and the type of wines I want to hang around. Now, if you know me, I make pretty restrained wine. So you're like, all right, so Wes Hagen was in charge of the production of a Viognier. First of all, it's, Viognier from Paso Robles tends to be pretty high alcohol. And this is actually, I think, the highest. Yeah, it's the highest alcohol white wine I've ever made. This one is just over 15. It's 15.2%. And we are incredibly honest at the Miller Family Wine Company with our alcohols. So it's wonderful to know that there is at least one company that's actually telling you what the actual alcohol is. And even though, I might talk about the Lagrigne from the Paso Robles Highlands district, 12.7% alcohol. So it's not that I have a tendency or a desire to make a certain style of wine. I want to look at wine and vintage as like I'm the surfer and vintage is the wave. Nature, if you try to work against nature as a winemaker, I think you're going to be disappointed. Or you end up making wines that are so stylistically affected that either the people really decide, wow, I've never had a wine this big or this lean. And you get a really, really sort of specific group that's following the style of your wine. I don't really want to be known as, oh, well, he's an in pursuit of balance guy and he only makes wine under 14%. That's like, takes away all the experimentation, takes away the ability for me to grow as a winemaker, takes away the ability, what if we get 104 degrees for 10 days like we did in 2010? 2010, we made rich, ripe wines. I didn't want to water them down to the point where they tasted like every other vintage. I am not, for the sake of consistency, going to alter the way I make wine and alter the chemistry of a wine to make a point. The point should be made by the vineyard. The point should be made by the dirt. Dirt don't lie. One of my favorite lines from Futurama. I'm old as dirt and dirt don't lie. Dirt don't lie. It doesn't lie. Dirt should show through in the wine. And when we're talking about Paso Robles Highlands district, we're talking about concretized sandy loam on the top of the soil. And then down when you get deeper in the soil through that tough soil, you have a ferrous clay subsoil. What does that matter? Well, that means for the first 3 or 4 years while the vines are really struggling to get their root system through that cemented sandy loam in that hot environment, cold nights, hot days, you're going to end up once maybe 3, 4, 5 years after the vine has been in the ground and irrigated, the irrigation in the water is going to open up channels so the roots can move down into that red clay. When I say ferrous, I mean it has iron. So if it has iron, you can always tell ferrous clay. I'm going to teach you guys how to look like a stud next time. Or a studette, stud, non-gender specific language. Come on, Wes. I went to a really good liberal arts university. I should know better. That when you see any type of clay or any type of soil that is really nice and red, you can say, oh, clearly there's quite a bit of iron in the soil, because what you're seeing is rust, literally rust in the soil. So ferrous clay with iron particles, you're going to get that. Clay is really important. And if you remember from some of our early discussions, clay is the engine of growth in a grapevine. If there is zero clay in the soil, that grapevine will really, really, really struggle to ever produce one cluster. Clay has a positive ionic charge. The root hairs that absorb nutrients and water have a negative charge. So for there to be a bond, there must be a positive charge in the soil. So as a result, when you have a clay subsoil and the roots get into that clay subsoil, the clay holds water better, the clay exchanges nutrients better. We call it a cation exchange capacity, and the cation exchange capacity of a clay soil is exponentially higher than it would be in a sandy soil. So sandy soil, generally small vines, small amount of growth, moderate vigor to low vigor, and then smaller clusters, smaller berries, and minimal amount of juice. In clay, because of its water holding capacity, you generally have more vigor. If you have a pure clay soil, you get 20 feet of cane growth per year, while in a sandy loam soil in the Santa Maria Hills, Santa Maria Valley, you may get maybe 3 to 4 feet of shoot growth per year. That's it. So you want to make sure to realize, I mean, in that warm climate in Paso Robles, it could get really overgrown and rank there, but it doesn't. A, because we take incredibly good care of the vines, but B, is because the cold nights. And sometimes the days get so hot that the vines just shut down. Remember, over 102 degrees, a grapevine says no more. They shut the stomata on the back of their leaves and they stop respiring and they stop photosynthesis. They do this also at about 25 miles per hour of wind. So if wind hits a vineyard, the vines shut down because they don't want to lose all their water and desiccate and die. So vines have amazing abilities to moderate their environment and to stop themselves from actually dying. So if it's gonna, if you know, it's gonna get really cold during the winter, all the leaves fall off, the vine gets woody and dormant, the vines look basically dead, and then magically they wake up in the spring and start growing again once most of the frost potential is gone, even though frost can hit us every once in a while. Whew. Okay, that was a little bit of an aside, but some stuff that a pro viticulturist and winemaker would know, and now you know. I hope you enjoyed that. Let's go ahead and have some Viognier. Okay, so obviously honey and white plums, lot of white floral character. I would say orange blossoms, definitely, or starred jasmine. One of my favorite smells is like taking a nice walk in California near the ocean and just getting a big whiff of white jasmine. As I said, the aromatics of a Viognier, it's kind of love or hate. Either you're going to love a Viognier, you're going to hate a Viognier. I did tell a story last time we did a little Viognier on the show, and I will shrink it and give you a quick one as soon as I put some of this in my mouth, because it is day drinking, not day smelling. Bone dry, a little unctuous, a little oily. Why is Viognier oily? Viognier is oily because it is a slip skin varietal. There are many varietals in the white wine world, there's no red slip skin varieties that I know of, that have a tendency when you press them that the skins just shear off. The skins tend to slip off of the exocarp, and the mesocarps tend to sort of slide off the more sort of, gooey, kind of the gooey part of the grape, just the inside. The inside of a grape is really only made up of basically sugar, some organic salts, water. That's basically it. So all the flavor is going to come from the skins. So why does Viognier taste like maybe it's been macerated for a few hours? Why does it have so much skin character? Well, think of any white wine variety that might have skin character. I think of Pinot Blanc, Pinot Gris. I think of a Marsanne, Viognier, or Marsanne, Roussanne, Viognier, Peak Pool. I think of, what else could be slip skin? Oh, Grenache Blanc. There's another beautiful, beautiful grape that is now coming to a little bit of popularity in Santa Barbara County. Probably mostly due to Chris Curran. So thanks, Curran Wines. If you ever want to taste one of the best Grenache Blancs out there, I think Chris is actually doing amazing stuff with that, and was very kind to me when I made my first Grenache Blanc. That she took my call and answered some questions about yeast and some other stuff. So she's very, very helpful. Flavor-wise, as I said, I'm getting a little peach, a little bit of nectarine. So definitely that stone fruit. If there's a 0 to 10, and in the aromatic and unctuousness in the world, so a 0 would be a Viognier that was very lean, high in acidity, very, very low unctuousness and aromatics. I would put this between a 6 and a 7. Clearly, this will not be the most floral forward Viognier you've ever tasted, but I think for a balanced, beautiful wine that never saw oak, never saw malolactic fermentation, which is a bacterial fermentation that makes sort of the crisp, bright, appley malic acid basically becomes a more rich sort of lactic acid. I guess it's the acid you would get in cream or cheese. So it makes the wine a little more seamless. And again, I apologize if my eyes are a little bit red tonight. Unfortunately, I'm suffering with a little bit of hay fever out here in California after our first little heat wave. So a lot of people are suffering in a lot of different ways. I think I can get through, I got through college with red eyes. I think I can get through an hour on Facebook and Instagram. So looking forward to it. Is Viognier the most forward of all Rhone whites? I would say it is. Viognier is sort of like strong genetics in the sense that if you put Viognier in anything, it has an impact. Put Viognier in a glass, you're going to smell it. It's very aromatic. You put it in another wine, it's going to dominate the blend, especially if it's at a relative percentage. One thing that Viognier does that a lot of people don't know about is it actually helps make some of the best red wines in the world, specifically the Rhone wines from the Côte Rôtie. Côte Rôtie is a French word that basically a very easy translation would be roasted slope. It's a slope. A Côte Rôtie would be a slope of a vineyard that has amazing sun exposure and that picks up the morning sun all the way into the evening sun. So it tends to make very rich, ripe wines in the Côte Rôtie. Now, in the Côte Rôtie, it's very, very traditional. Every 10th vine, Syrah. Okay, Syrah. So through 9 vines of Syrah, 1 vine of Viognier. 9 vines of Syrah, 1 vine of Viognier. So you wait till the Syrah is perfectly ripe. And as you go through the vineyard, you also harvest all of the Viognier and you throw in 10% Viognier. Wait, Syrah with Viognier, isn't that going to make rosé? I mean, if you put a bunch of white grapes in a red grape fermentation, isn't that going to kind of wreck the color? Not unless you were using wreck in a more sort of modern, like it's bad, it's wrecking. Absolutely, that Viognier, up to 10% of white grapes in a red wine fermentation brings out more color, more richness. And of course, a little bit of Viognier in Syrah is going to give you all these amazing floral aromatics at the edge of perception. So you might not say, wow, it smells like Viognier. No, it's going to smell like Syrah. But behind, some of those, blackberry, sort of dark cherry, sort of the dark berry characters, the pepper, and maybe the earthiness or, the character of the soil, you're also going to get this little hint of this beautiful floral character that comes off of the Viognier. And the Viognier, a lot of the enzymes that exist between the exo and the mesocarp within the grapes and those little vacuoles that hold all the color compounds and the flavor compounds, some of those actually help release the flavor and the color compounds in red wine. In fact, you can buy these jars of pectic enzymes called Scottzyme or Lalamanzyme or whatever, and you pour these enzymes in your red wine when you make red wine professionally, and the enzymes help you bring out color in red wine. If you expect the wine to be lightly colored, you add some enzyme, pectic enzymes, boom, it's going to help you get more color. That was actually, we probably never would do that if we didn't know about adding white wine. So you would always, if you add just a little bit of white grapes up to 10%, you're going to get a darker, richer, a darker colored wine. And again, some of those aromatics are going to be beautiful. Interestingly enough, we used to have, I think, something like 32 Chardonnay vines that were spread out in the Pinot Noir sections of our vineyard. Maybe Sonoma grapevines, which I'm going to continue to talk smack about a little bit in just a second. They would, once in a while, they would send you these boxes of dormant grapevines, and you would plant the dormant grapevines, and 3 years later, you would start picking them when they were ripe. 3 years if you're lucky. It takes 3 years to grow your first crop. And then, 1 year to get it up the stick, the next year to produce some fruit, and the third year to actually, or some fruiting wood, and the third year to actually grow some fruit on that third year wood. So there was like 30 Chardonnay vines spread out all around Clos Pepe where I used to work. And every year I would mark them with tape because I keep tape in my pocket as the vineyard manager. So we were picking in the middle of the night, and then someone would be like, hey, Wes, there's white grapes on this. Do you want it in the bucket or out of the bucket? And I always say the same thing, in the bucket, especially if it was for my wine, or I would call Brian Loring or Adam Lee or Adam Tolmack or Ken Brown. Hey, we got like 30 pounds of Chardonnay. You want me to throw it in the bin, or do you want me to, just not? And they would all say the same thing. Yeah, throw it in the bin. Because if you put So I don't think there's very many Clos Pepe Pinot Noirs out there that don't have like 0.001% of Chardonnay. And I always was like stoked. And if they didn't want the Chardonnay, I've had a couple winemakers say, no, didn't want the Chardonnay in our Pinot. Okay, well, I put the buckets maybe in a fridge or something. And next time I made Pinot Noir, or I would take them to the winery, throw them in, always makes a real beautiful difference. But we're talking about white Rhones tonight. So here's the deal. So Viognier is probably the most forward, most well-known white Rhone grape. But in the Rhone Valley of France, this region has an amazing amount of different grapes that they grow in various parts. So Roussanne and Marsanne are two that are very, very similar, especially grown for some of the highest quality white wines that are produced in the Rhone Valley. I cannot tell as a 25-year wine judge with a pretty good palate. If I'm giving Marsanne and Roussanne, or Marsanne and Roussanne, I have to learn to say that, I will probably mistake them. Give me a 50-50 chance. I'll be lucky if I get them. And one reason is, as I grew up as a California winemaker and as a Californian, is all the Marsanne and Roussanne that I've been tasting probably has been mislabeled. And this really goes back to Bonnie Doon and our friend Randall Graham, who I had a great time debating over conventional, organic, and biodynamic production methods at an event maybe 7-10 years ago called Doon at the Clos, which was awesome. And Randall stayed at our house, and I still send him messages via Twitter, and sometimes he even responds to me with my name, which makes me feel great because I read his newsletter religiously as a kid, even before I knew really what wine was all about, how lucky we were. But on that same point, that Randall had a number of vines that he got cuttings from, and he planted those vines. And as a result, those vines were actually taken by Rich Kunde at Sonoma Grapevines, where we bought all of our grapevines to plant our vineyard at Clos Pepe, and they were mislabeled. So, for instance, like the Marsanne at Zaca Mesa is not actually Marsanne; it's actually Roussanne. So there's a lot of confusion. Fortunately, I don't know many people who can tell the difference between Marsanne and Roussanne. They're both have an unctuousness and a little bit less aromatic, so they're a little more focused. If you're kind of like tired of Chardonnay, which I can't understand, because if you can't find a really great cool climate Chardonnay, a Chablis, a real Chablis, or a Cote de Beaune white, something from Burgundy. If you can't find Sonoma Coast, Santa Rita Hills, Santa Maria Valley, J.Wilkes, hello. Cool climate Chardonnay is absolutely gorgeous. But if you do love Chardonnay and you're looking to expand your taste palette, a malolactic oaked Roussanne or Marsanne will really suit you because it'll have the richness and the unctuousness of the wine. It'll have a flavor profile not completely unlike Chardonnay. You'll know you're not drinking a Chardonnay, but there'll be maybe some more minerals, some more unctuousness to it, and they really do make good wines. Grenache Blanc, another white Rhone wine, gaining a lot of popularity. By the way, Roussanne, Marsanne, Grenache Blanc. The amount that are actually planted in California in the United States is almost insignificant. Zaca Mesa, a couple other vineyards probably within the Ballard Canyon American viticultural area. Of course, you have Tablas Creek, my favorite winery in Paso Robles. Love, love, love it. So you sort of have a situation where white Rhones, we're talking about them, but other than Viognier, it's going to be very difficult to find these wines. They also make incredibly gorgeous sort of blends. So a Chateauneuf white or generally Hermitage are going to be maybe 100% Marsanne, I believe. That could be Roussanne. I have to find out. But one of the greatest values in wine I've ever tasted is I did a tasting of Hermitage Blanc. And these wines are like $75 and they drink like they're $750. I think Cru Gamay Beaujolais and white Northern Rhone white Hermitage, especially white Hermitage and white Rhone blends, I think are some of the best values in the world of wine. Chateauneuf white, all these grapes. Picpoul, add some Picpoul too, and some other grapes too. They have some. They have a grape that I forget what it's called, but it's actually Vermentino. There's all these grapes. There's like so many grapes in the Rhone that we can get to know. And some of these grapes, it's like if you ever get bored of wine, it's not wine's fault. It's your fault. There is so much to learn and so much to know. Chauve Selection, Hermitage Blanc, the best value ever. Think about that. a wine fan talking about thinking that it might be it. And then we've got Michael talking about Viognier skins help bind anthocyanins. Wow, those are some big words. So yeah, we're sort of jumping in, and I'm going to definitely see what's kind of going on with you guys. I think this Viognier is spectacular. We've got we're originally made the Viognier, I believe, just for the wine club and just for the tasting room. But for some reason, like 30 days ago, we decided to put it on the website. And I think you're going to really dig it. It's really, really, really fun wine. It's nice because it has almost enough richness that if you love red wine, I think Viognier would be an excellent sort of gateway drug into the world of white wine and aromatic whites, because A, it smells so delicious, B, it's very tasty, it's very pleasurable, and C, it's got grip, it's got tannin. We talk about, Viognier binding and the skins and the phenolic compounds binding anthocyanins, which just means that it binds the flavor compounds from red grapes. But I think it has its own structure and its own grip to begin with as well. And it's absolutely quite delicious. Cool. Well, I hope you guys all enjoyed a little bit of talk about white Rhones. If you have questions about white Rhones or comments, it looks like some people that I've been watching comment know more about white Rhones than I do. So let's find out who's here and what we're talking about. So Dawn came in. Let's see. I think that was about where we stopped. James Jameson, welcome. Norma Torres, welcome. And Terry's here. And Kelly Hines in the house. Michael Coughlin is in the house. And Rick Pratt, love to see you, bud. If you don't know Rick Pratt, if you like NCIS, basically every location and every prop ever on that show, from the first episode to the last, is the responsibility of Mr. Rick Pratt. Also an incredibly good golfer and a hell of a nice guy. Love my Rick. And we got Sean and Nikki's in the house in Vegas, I believe. Chef Scott, welcome. And yep, I think I saw all of that. I'm going to work my way through a couple comments on the J.Wilkes website. I have to remember my mouse does not work on white paper for some reason. Oh, Clairette and Bourbon. I know that. I looked it up today. I said, I thought maybe we can, Clairette is actually one of the progenitor grapes, Gouais Blanc, Cabernet Franc, Pinot Noir, and Clairette. Those four grapes, you can trace 95% of all grapes anywhere in France, Italy, Spain, you name it, in Western Europe. Those are the progenitor grapes. Those are the grapes that really, and you could throw in Muscat of Alexandria, but then you're getting also into Northern African winemaking. And did you know that this show celebrates diversity, that there was a strong nationalized Northern African wine industry before a single vineyard or single high quality wine was ever made in Western Europe. So wine actually moved from Transcaucasia to Asia Minor. And when the Canaanites and the Phoenicians learned to use it, up into the Fertile Crescent, it was actually brought down into the lower Nile Valley, where the Nubians would plant the vineyards. The Canaanites would actually manage the vineyards, and the Canaanites would actually make the wine. How do we know? 1921, a guy named Howard Carter dug up a tomb in the Valley of the Kings, turned out to be the tomb of Tutankhamun. And turns out not only was he not just a boy king, but a warrior king, but he was a great lover of wine. And of course, it was de rigueur for anyone who had any money and wealth and power within Egypt to be buried with wines from 5 specific Grand Cru vineyards within Egypt. If you couldn't afford to be buried with these wines, you would make pictures of these wines with the vineyard designations drawn on your tomb. And if you couldn't afford that, you would just write their names on the walls. But 27 jars of vineyard designated wine were buried with King Tut for the afterlife. Some of these wines had medicinal properties, and some were actually medicinal properties to take care of venereal diseases, which begs the question, what the hell did these Egyptian people think was going to happen in the afterlife? That you would need to be cured of venereal diseases once you were in heaven? heaven is a much different concept probably than what the Egyptians thought that they were going through, obviously, because they had to have their chariots, they had to have their weapons, they had to have, some of them, they had to have servants, they had to have wine, they had to have beer. All these things were incredibly important in an Egyptian tomb. But on these vineyard designated jars of wine that we found, that Howard Carter found in King Tut's tomb, basically the name of the winemaker was an Egyptian cartouche. It was a stamp of Egyptian symbols, but the vineyard designation was always written in the Canaanite language. So we know that the viticulturists and the people that were managing the vineyards and planting the vineyards and not doing the labor, that was the Nubians, but as far as the people that did the sort of mental work in the viticulture and the winemaking were Canaanites. And the Canaanites, so I always say that, people are like, wine is so Western Eurocentric. No, it's not. There was a Transcaucasian, a Near Eastern, a Mesopotamian, and clearly a Canaanite, Phoenician, and Mediterranean influence that really did reach down pretty far in the Nile Valley. So there you go. And the Egyptians loved beer. In fact, if you think slaves built the pyramids, you would be wrong. They were actually paid in beer. 640 million gallons of beer were paid to the people who built the pyramids of Giza. So thank you, beer. And they actually learned how to brew medicinal beer in Egypt. Look at the research of Dr. Patrick McGovern and realize that from, I think it was like Scorpion the First. I think they found his mummy and they started doing tests on the mummy and they kept finding tetracycline in the mummy. We're talking almost 4,000 years before the invention of tetracycline that won the Nobel Prize back in the 1950s. These people figured out tetracycline. That's impossible, right? So they kept thinking, okay, well, someone who was using modern antibiotics somehow spilled, they were taking the antibiotics and somehow it got on the mummy, in the mummy. Let's check another mummy. They checked a couple other mummies. Turns out a couple of them had tetracycline. So what was the deal? Turns out Dr. Patrick McGovern started collecting ancient Egyptian beer recipes and worked with some local brewers to help recreate these beverages. After he had gone through a number of them, he had his little Archimedes aha moment where he created a beer that naturally produced tetracycline by ingredients that were listed in an Egyptian beer recipe. So Egyptians not only could make, beer with myrrh, beer with, sort of the other types of natural medicines that they had back then, but they could actually make beer with tetracycline and use it as an honest and even modern to us antibiotic to help people with serious diseases. I find that absolutely fascinating. So here's to beer. You can't talk about alcohol history. Well, you can't talk about humanism. Humanism will always lead to wine, but history always leads to beer. So I'm also, by the way, I'm working to get on a gentleman that has the knowledge of really like a master cicerone. We're a local brewer. His name is Jason Osborne. If you know him, you know how smart he is. I would say Jason knows twice as much about beer than I will ever know about wine. And he is fascinating, performative, exciting, charismatic, and everything else. I'm going to get him on in a couple weeks, and we're going to do a full beer show on Friday. And he's going to be at his place drinking some beer. I'll be at my place drinking some beer. We're going to talk about the history of beer and also the current status of beer styles. And then we're going to talk about the future of beer and what we can expect after will the United States continue its dominance in the world of craft beer. And we'll also give some love to Jimmy Carter, who legalized home brewing in the United States. And basically, yes, Jimmy Carter started the craft beer revolution in the United States. Okay, so the first question I saw that I'll answer, and then I'll go through and see if you guys have any. And always feel free to type where you are, what you're drinking, because I always like to see what people are drinking. So the first question I saw was a question that said, when are wineries going to open back up after COVID? I assume you mean tasting rooms. The wineries are considered in California an essential business. So our wineries open. We're still doing racking. We're still going in, checking barrels, checking tanks, doing lab analysis. Thank you to the essential employees of the Miller Family Wine Company, not only the people that are keeping our wines happy, healthy, and safe, testing them to make sure they are, but also Katie Kemp and Richard Mather and basically all the people, Catherine Velasquez, all the people on the order desk that are taking your orders and turning them around. We started this whole DTC thing basically without enough people that we knew. And after the first month of the show, we went over 6K, basically six figures of wine sales through direct to consumer. So we've really made a pivot. This word pivot. If you're in any type of business, you've heard this word way too much in the last few weeks. But we really have made a pivot to turn a lot of our business from sort of selling to distributors to selling direct to customers. And of course, we love to sell direct to you because we can also give you a much, much better deal. Why would we give a distributor better deal than you? Well, in the old world, that's the way that it worked. In the new world, we want your business. So you're seeing sort of a revolution. This is a double benefit to every person who loves wine in the world today. And I'll explain what I mean. We were already in pre-COVID. We were already in the golden age of wine. Wine has never been of higher quality and less price. The quality to price ratio of wine has never been better. So as a result, we are seeing, and there was a slight oversupply issue. So oversupply, highest quality means you guys have been getting the best deals of your life. Now in this business environment, everyone wants to capture DTC because obviously you're going to get more money for a bottle of wine selling it right to a consumer than selling it to someone in a 3-tier model. So as a result, we've gone from the golden age of wine. Wine has never been better, never higher quality, never been less expensive. Now we're actually going into the platinum age of wine because not only has wine never been tastier, not only has wine has never been cleaner, better, more wonderful, viticultural advances, winemaking advances, scientific advances, obviously, we are making the best wine in the world in California for everyday drinking. France will always make the best and the worst wine in the world. That's my opinion. Maybe Italy makes the worst wine in the world. I've had some Italian wines. I went back there 15 years ago, and some of those wines were so dirty and so Brett-laden. Of course, when you taste an Italian wine, it's perfect. It's like a beautiful woman from Italy. There's no such thing as a more beautiful woman than the Bella, right? I mean, I think I won't get into beauty, but let's just say how wonderful it is to drink California wine. So consistent, so delicious, so fruity, so bright, complex if you want it, ageable if you want it. But if you want to spend $10-15 on a bottle of wine, I think California delivers. And as Americans, we should support California because you can't go through an hour of your life in sequestration without using a product from California. Wine, the internet, an electric guitar, chip, iPhone, double-decker hamburger. Believe it or not, the Zamboni was invented in Los Angeles. Did you know that? The Zamboni, that's that little machine that goes around ice rinks and cleans them all. California rocks. And obviously, as the 6th or 7th greatest economy in the world, and as a 4th-generation California, I love it. Do you know what the New York Times headline was the day they drove the Golden Spike and connected the Intercontinental Railroad in the United States, I believe in Utah? When the Transcontinental Railroad was opened up, the New York Times published the headline, "California annexes the United States." I don't know. I'm feeling in a California-centric mood today. Maybe it's because I'm dreaming of driving down Highway 1 between sort of Carmel to Cambria, stopping at Nepenthe for a glass of Krug Granonnet for $40 and an Ambrosia burger, and then maybe stopping at Deachin's for dinner and staying over with my wife. So California means so much to me. What else should we talk about? Oh, I was answering questions. I get a little distracted. Dominic, you're having a little of the Kent's Red. It's a 90% Barbera and 10% Lagrein blend. I hope you're enjoying that. I really like its juiciness. I really do. Claret. Native to the south of France, yes. Claret really does have a huge influence in the history of wine for sure. White grapes to red would intensify the color extraction. It's true. It's true. And Dominic is holding court with all of his amazing winemaker knowledge. Indeed, I think it's disingenuous to make a wine that takes it out of its flavor profile of the place it's going. Unless it's a really cheap wine. This is kind of a controversial issue, but I think if a wine is on the shelf for less than $10, which is nothing that we make at the Miller Family Wine Company, so I'm really not talking about us. But having some stuff in your wheelhouse that can improve the character, quality, and fruitiness of a wine, and that includes Mega Purple, which is basically a concentrate from Argentinian Malbec with maybe some Alicante Boucher. It's like a syrup that you can add to a red wine that gives Mayoni, excuse me, that would actually give the wine darker color, richer flavor, and more fruit extract. And then you would basically an oak adjuncts, oak staves, oak beads, oak chips, oak dust, and I'm going to go there. Oak tea, which is just liquid oak. Having different enzymes, liquid tannin, using those for, first of all, none of this stuff is going to hurt you. It's not poison. It's all organically sourced and created knowing that people are going to put it in the human body. If you're drinking $5 to $10 wine every night, I don't think you're going to die from Mega Purple poisoning. I don't think that's going to be a problem. It's safe to drink. And if you're drinking those inexpensive wines, you're getting better quality wines than kings and queens were drinking 100 years ago. A $10 wine pulled randomly off a shelf of any supermarket or any liquor store anywhere in the United States, pretty much anywhere in the world, except in some few places still really struggling with sort of rustic production methods, especially in former Soviet areas and areas that are really hit hard by the economy. Certain parts of Greece make incredibly rustic wines, true of Italy as well. But in general, you could take a bottle off a shelf anywhere in the world for $10 today and know that that wine is tastier, fresher, and probably of higher quality than any wine that was being consumed by royalty 100 or 200 years ago. So we are absolutely in a golden age. There's no doubt about it. How do the roots make it through the dense clay? Oak trees in Tidewater, Virginia are up against clay and spread out. Well, generally they will spread out, but once they actually taste the sweet sort of cation exchange of the soil, that will actually increase. So yes, it'll be more difficult for them to get through the clay. Number one, if we do a proper and deep irrigation, the water or the rainfall may go through the clay, wet the clay, and it makes it easier for it to get through a restrictive layer such as clay. Now, there are some hard pan clays that will actually restrict any amount of roots. Roots will never get through it, and they will spread. But in perfect conditions with no restrictive layers and no, you will basically see a grapevine will root 1 foot per year down to the world record, which was measured near Perth, Australia, I believe. Yes, Perth, Australia, down to 215 feet. So grapevine roots can, and that was not even a 215-year-old vine. That's a pretty damn old vine. Not very many 200-year-old vines in the world. But that'll give you a little bit of idea of how that works. Oh, yes. Jolie, we're talking about Bruno D'Alfonso. Yes, he thinks wine is made in the winery through chemistry. I'll leave that alone. He's got good hair. Vintage should decide the style, and that's why I say, the vineyard is the beach. Vintage is the wave. So the beach is going to influence the vintage. The beach is going to influence the wave. The wave is going to influence the way I ride on it. If it's a delicate, elegant vintage, it's a 2-foot wave, and I can move around on it. I don't have to worry about getting ripped up on the reef. If it's a 9-foot wave, and that is like, here comes 102 degrees for a week, yeah, that could be a problem. So as a result, we may take a deep breath and pick a little bit early just to make sure that the grapes don't get desiccated and ruined and turn into raisins by a big heat spike. So yes, I like that. Viognier, we got Phil Carpenter's loving the Viognier, and I'm loving the fact that you dropped off those 2 beautiful beers. I'm going to put those cans up on Reddit Craft Beer tonight, and I'm telling you, people are going to go crazy because I've never even seen those labels. And Kelly Wilkes is in the house. Good to see you. That's Jeff Wilkes' sister out in Plano, Texas. Welcome. She's a regular here, and we really appreciate her coming out. And obviously the legacy and all the beautiful wines that her brother Jeff made, and the fact that he left a legacy and now I'm the winemaker. So kind of like, one step removed, Jeff is helping me pay my mortgage. So thank you. Thank you for being part of what we do here. Talking about Jessica Gasca's Story of Soil, drinking some Martian Vineyard Gamay Noir. Gamay, man, I'm telling you, Cru Beaujolais, is there a better value in the world of red wine? I don't know it. A good Morgon or a good Moulin au Vin, a good, gosh, there's so many beautiful, I think there's like 7 or 8 different crus in Beaujolais. If you've never had a Cru Beaujolais, I definitely recommend looking it up and giving it a try. Love the fact that you guys have been having this wonderful conversation. Sapwood Cellars Chocolate Stout with a pork pie. Oh, man. You know, pies and like savory pies and Thanksgiving always remind me of something. And I'm trying to go more plant-based because I've been watching these damn shows that show like what happens to your blood and your athletic and other performance if you're constantly eating animal products. So I really want to be more vegan and vegetarian based, but then I think of gravy. I need to eat more gravy. When I eat gravy, I'm happier. I also used to say that I couldn't be a happy human being if I didn't have crunchy, delicious French baguettes with unpasteurized butter at least once a week. Yeah. Oh, and it's 60 degrees in Minnesota. Yeah. So you got your Smashberry Rosé working. I love it. I love it. Tommy Schmitz is in the house. Got some bubbly, very nice. Got some wine delivered from Wink. We don't mind a little competition. We love to hear all the wines you're drinking. Eddie Gray, man, I swear, I wish I could like fax you some chili. Yeah, no, the turkey chili should be pretty good. It's going to be a little healthier. It's black beans, northern white beans, and some chili beans, all with chipotles and some ancho chilies and some jalapenos. And I know chipotles are just smoked jalapenos, but yeah, and then a lot of spices. Cool. So let me take a quick look. Perfect. And back to behavior. Thank you for your kind words. And Virginia, we were just talking about Virginia wines the other night. I've spent quite a bit of time in Virginia tasting their wines. I tasted their wines maybe 15 years ago. Then I went and tasted their wines about 4 years ago and found such an improvement in the Viognier, such an improvement in the Cabernet Franc. Some people who are really pushing forward the idea of Norton and some of these other hybrid wines that are making absolutely delicious wines. So love what Virginia is doing. My favorite thing about Virginia wines, which some of you might have heard before, is they're investing in value. Now, those wines may cost $20 a bottle to make, to grow, and to produce in Virginia. And instead of charging $45 for them, they're charging just what it costs to make them. Wine and wineries may not be a good place to make money, but they're a great place to spend money. And I think that Virginia is doing an excellent job in investing in value in the sense that they are putting their price points where the wine's quality dictates. I think for a while, DC and the Beltway were buying a lot of Virginia wines at higher prices. So they thought they could get away with selling $45 Viognier and $55 Cab Franc that drank like a $25 California wine. Sorry, it's just my opinion. Now I think what I'm seeing in Virginia is the price is actually consummate with the quality of the wine. And as long as it's consummate with the quality of wine, I will be a proper wine patriot. And of course I'll drink Virginia wine. Could you imagine what Thomas Jefferson would say to you if you say, I reject a delicious, balanced Virginia wine? It is a freaking miracle. Go back and read Thomas Jefferson's writings on trying to grow vinifera wine, specifically Bordeaux varieties at Monticello. I mean, it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. And of course, he had to deal with phylloxera 130 years before just about anybody else did. But there's some pretty cool stuff there, and I hope you guys can check it out. And I'm glad you're stoking to and back to behavior. Looks like you're drinking some margaritas. I'm a huge fan of margaritas. I really hope there's no sour mix in it, unless it's really bad tequila. Well, you love Story of Soil, so you have a great palate. So all well and good. Oh, yes. And we've got Alex Rasson in the house. I'm saying it right, yeah. For the first time in my life, winemaker at Metric Wines. If you haven't had his wines, he also imports sherries. I always say sherry is like one of those undiscovered things like orange wine. There's like 10 people in San Francisco and 10 people in Brooklyn that drink orange wines on a regular basis, and those are the same people that drink great sherry. The moment for me with sherry was drinking a cold sherry with oysters. I finally got it. I finally got it. Yes, Dead Lioness. I have tried Israeli wines. The Cabernets from the Golan Heights are spectacular. I would say that is first of all, you got to give Israelis credit. Without Israeli agricultural technology and desalinization technology, but specifically their drip emitters, their sand filtration units, by far, Israelis have the greatest agricultural minds probably in the world. And I think the wines are actually increasing and getting better. There was a time when the best wine you could have for Seder was Manischewitz. And as a self-professed sort of ex-Presbyterian wishing I grew up Jewish, because my chances of winning a Nobel Prize would have gone up 3,700% over a Presbyterian. I'm not going to win a Nobel Prize, but I always, for some reason, I've always been around the kindest, most wonderful Jewish people in the world. Was that the same? No. Can't be the same shirt I was wearing yesterday. Yesterday, I think I wore a white tequila shirt. I think. But no, I'm going through and looking and trying to make sure that I'm not wearing the same shirt over again. Oh, Greek Retsina. Okay, so that's terebinth resin. You got to remember that Retsina is a historical beverage. And, there's still people drinking PBR. Sorry. There's still people drinking certain styles of alcoholic beverage that are not absolutely delicious, but they drink it because of the style. Like I love Fernet. Fernet is like Retsina. Either you love it or you hate it. And there are some people that appreciate the flavor of terebinth resin. Why terebinth resin? Because it operates as an antioxidant and protects the wine just like sulfur dioxide. And that's exactly why it was used in the ancient world, developed a fan base, and that fan base still exists today. As a Mediterranean woman drinking only, I'm sure that you certainly miss a lot of those beautiful Greek and Italian wines that you left behind. But I'm sure drinking American wine is a good methadone for that. We got Joe Estrada. It's nice to have you here, Joe. Thank you for the message earlier. Bellmead bourbon. Oh, a little brown liquor sounding really good about now. Little Cab Franc from Arlington, Virginia. Sounds great. Yes. So tasting rooms. So I really kind of paused on that. I should probably finish my thought, which sometimes, as my wife will tell you, I have a hard time doing. So when are tasting rooms going to open up? Well, our tasting room is never closed. We are open for wine pickup, and we have opened the J.Wilkes tasting room in downtown Santa Barbara to basically walk out. We'll put a case out for you 10 feet away from you. You can come and pick it up. And I think you have to order online, so we don't touch credit cards. We don't do anything. And we changed a little bit. I think you can actually get Ballard Lane, Smashberry, and Barrel Burner all at the tasting room. And then we're also doing free delivery anywhere in Santa Barbara County. So that's kind of cool, keeping people employed. When are we going to be able to go back into a tasting room, look across a counter, shake the hand of someone, and say, "Stoked to have you here"? I'm a winemaker, not a scientist. I'm a drinker, not an epidemiologist. Hopefully soon. I mean, my best guess is without social distancing, probably somewhere between summer and fall. About the time where I am working as a winemaker, and losing my mind, working weeks and hours that are almost sort of like military in a war. My guess is, using Murphy's Law, social distancing will probably end right around the time where I'm going to be basically stuck in a vineyard in a winery pretty much full time. So I'm just going to put that out there. I think there's other people that know a hell of a lot more. And seriously, you just don't want to take this advice from a winemaker. But if I was going to have to guess, I would say that we'll be open with social distancing probably by the end of summer. And I would say that we'll probably be open otherwise as soon as medical professionals say that social distancing is no longer important. We have herd immunity. Calcareous shale and its effect on Paso Rhone whites. Well, calcareous shale is high calcium, usually part of the Monterey deposit. and you're basically getting high amounts of exchangeable calcium. So the more exchangeable calcium that exists in basically the root zone of a grapevine, the more that grapevine can absorb that calcium and thicken its skins. So the thickened skins tend to add a little bit more color, a little more flavor, a little more tannin. And in white wines, tends to reduce the juice and make a more intense wine that may have a little minerality, especially if the wine has good acidity. So I would say calcareous shale, calcareous soils, their main influence is going to be on thickening the skins of the grapes. And thickened skins reduce juice, increase the skin to juice ratio, and make a more intense wine. So calcareous shale within a sandy loam soil or a clay loam soil or even a silt loam soil is some of the best soils to be growing grapes on in the world because of the intensity that it offers, because of limited vigor, as well as thickened skins. And as the skins thicken, the amount of juice is actually reduced exponentially. And that makes a huge difference. And yes, I mentioned your Viognier in Virginia. I would say between the Cab Franc and the Viognier and the Norton, those are my three favorites. And we've got Holman and Planet Grape Master Somm, Crushed Grape Cron, RKO Vine. We got Dusty Neighbor in the house, Ski Wake Chick in the house, Roussan and Marsan. All the yummy Rhone whites. Yes. Let's not forget Grenache Blanc. Thank you, Chris Curran. Carol Gottlieb's in the house. Good to see you, Carol. And Blake. Vintage Buzz. That's the person that asked the question about the tasting rooms. Andrew Murray, Roasted Slope. Good call. Boy, those Andrew Murray wines we used to buy just cases of back in the 90s when we first moved to the Valley are still drinking well. Why does Viognier always seem to prevent a sugary sweetness? This one is bone dry. What you're tasting is ethanol. So ethanol gives a sweetness. You read sometimes, especially as a diabetic, about alcohol sugar, like sorbitol and xanthitol, all these alcohol sugars that they use as replacements for sugar. So you don't have to actually, it affects my blood sugar exactly the same or a little bit less. But so you can put sugar free or added sugar 0 and still put a whole lot of sugar in anything that you want to put in. And the same is true of alcohol. Alcohol is perceived by the human papillae on these flavor receptors on our tongue. When Viognier or any other high alcohol wine hits our palate, that ethanol, specifically the glycerin and glycerol, are perceived by the human palate as sweetness. So there you go. Good question, by the way. I like that question. Ruben, good to see you, my friend. Glad you're here. And Luis, Miss Castaldo, very nice to see you too. I can't wait to get back in a tasting room too. I was taking Tuesdays, every Tuesday, going down to Santa Barbara, just hanging out and talking to people. I wasn't drinking. I was tasting and spitting, I swear. Oh, wow. And the Dead Lioness is getting into an NE IPA and then getting into some other wines too. That's fantastic. All right. And from DC, we'll have enough time that I'll be able to get to SommCon in DC again this year, and I'll meet you at Rose's Luxury for dinner. How does that sound? One of my favorite restaurants in the world. I actually know someone there. I don't even have to stand in line. And Phil and KS Lines. The only problem, I do have a little struggle, a little bit. Chef Avi. Oh man, I want to get back down to the west side and out to San Pedro and eat some really, really good food. So glad that you joined us. And Cameron, welcome. Looks like I've gone through a number of people that have come in. If I somehow missed your name, it reminds me, and I'm going to date myself here, like in Romper Room, back when I was a kid, I was always bitter because the woman in Romper Room would look through her little mirror and say, I see Johnny and I see Karen and I see Billy. And she never once, the hundreds of times I ever watched, ever said Wes. And my brother would always heckle because my brother was Donald Robert, went by Rob, because she would call out Rob like every third or fourth show. And he would look over at me like, yeah, she sees me, but she doesn't see you. Yeah, but how many Wes's are in the world? I'm a little rarer than a Rob. So, and more rare for other reasons than that, but we'll leave that go. I'm going to pour myself a little more Viognier. I'm going to go make a little dinner for my wife and myself. I think we're doing stuffed red bell peppers tonight, which should be good. Try to eat some healthy food. I'm in my down day from my new workout routine, so I didn't have to do anything today except relax and get a bunch of work done. Tomorrow, back to the weight rack. I figure, again, if prisoners can get a prison ripped, we should all get out of this ripped as well. Well, we just lost our Instagram, so I'll wish all of you a wonderful evening. Remember, as always, to make sure to find someone in your family, find someone in your neighborhood, and find someone in your friend circle that may need a bit of extra love. Reach out to them and make sure that they feel it. So we all are responsible for everyone today, not only ourselves, not only our family, but our community. And feeling this wonderful community feeling that I do when I walk around my community for exercise, that everyone is saying hello, everyone is waving. Let's keep that up. This is not going to stop with virus. We are relearning what it means to be beautiful and wonderful, loving human being on this planet. So get out there, make a difference, be careful, wash your damn hands. And if you can't be the wine you love, if you can't be with the one you love the wine, love the one you're with. Have a great night, and I will see you tomorrow. V is for Vino, Wes on Wine, day drinking collab. Let's get together and have some fun. Pull something special out of your cellar, because I'm going to want to see it tomorrow right there on the J.Wilkes Wine Santa Barbara Facebook page, and I'll put it on the other Facebook page and Instagram too. So thanks. Hope you guys had a great night. I certainly did. Doug and Landon Scott, thank you for checking right back in, and I really appreciate it. Great night, great show. Thanks, everybody, for being part of it. See you guys.
Okay, Facebook Live, it is 4:45, which means it is time for Facebook Live. Jay, drink with Wes.